All right, peace. It's Bronzebird returning back with a new video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So before I begin, I know there's a lot of people who's been wondering where I've been, what I've been up to. It's just a lot of stuff going on in the background, but I did decide to say to myself and, to the audience out there, I must return back to you guys with new videos and to make sure that I make some recordings about things that I feel is interesting when it has the conversation. So I just want to start off light with you guys, and then progressively I'll bring my conversations into some things that you may or may not know, and some things that I just wanted to review over the summer I thought was very important. So to get into this conversation, I just wanted to show you this video that I had picked up today about this man having this conversation about just something I really thought was just really amazing coming out of an Hispanic man's mouth about, so-called white men need to get their act together and stop letting men take their women. Now, I didn't really hear him sit up there and say that it was a black man that was taking their women, but we'll get into this conversation soon enough, and you'll hear exactly my thoughts and processes about this. So, Pete.
Well, here we go again with that bullshit. I don't know, the past year, 2 years, 3 years, every video you see is of people talking bad about America, the white guys in general.
And let me stop him right there. About America being talked and looked down on because America is about to be destroyed. Let's really be honest about that. America is now a whore of the world. The fact of the matter is, like, pretty much everybody is raping the shit out of America, specifically China, in my opinion, but that's another conversation for another day. And as terms is talking about so-called white men, you don't think so-called white men noticed that they was being talked and looked down on? But at the end of the day, this is still his kingdom, even though his kingdom is slowly starting to come into a demise. So, I mean, to defend what? I mean, I'm just questioning your motives on it when you talk, but okay.
Made fun of, looked down on. All you see is videos of, white boys being punked. Your women are being stolen from you every single day.
By who? And I really want to make sure that World Star, this is why I stopped the video, because I did not see World Star, or I'm from World Star, that in this video, this man specifically says so-called black men are stealing so-called white women. You understand? My whole entire thing about it is white women is a woman to who? Who are they being stolen from? The white man probably willfully gave his woman away. And at the end of the day, having this conversation, the woman was not to be claimed in general in the Western world. Now, the Western woman wants to do her own thing. She wants to be catapulted by the left, and she wants to be able to do her own thing in the demise of equality, not even equity, equality. You understand? So when they talk about the white woman is being stolen from who? The so-called white man knows exactly. He gets the pick of the litter. He gets to pick any woman he wants. If anything, the so-called white woman wants to still compete with her man and still try to have a seat at the table with her man. And then more times than not, she's still able to. But to sit up there and say the so-called black man is stealing the so-called white woman is just egregious to me. I don't agree with that statement, but I know he didn't say that out his mouth directly.
You know what I mean? I mean, look around. You know what's going on. You just choose not to say nothing. You choose not to do nothing about it.
Because the so-called white man can sit up there and stick his dick in any type of woman he wants. with no angst or no drawbacks. Unless you're a real radical, I'm really against the so-called white man, but more than likely, that's just them putting on a show. If they know they had a chance for the so-called white man, or especially because I hear out of certain people's mouths, a high value man and all this other stuff, she's going to get with that so-called white man because of what he has to offer. You understand? So I don't want to hear that because the dude is in rulership. That's all that means.
You know what I mean?
No, I don't.
But I feel like it's getting out of line. I feel like there's a lot of motherfuckers that want to say something, but they really ain't got the heart and they really ain't got the balls to say nothing about it. But
that's not true. We live in 2022 where you can make a grandiose YouTube video, be on TikTok, which used to be Musically, right? You can be on Instagram, Twitter, all those different medium websites you can be on to express exactly how you really feel. The only thing you can't really talk about verbatim is probably talking about the LGBTQ community and talking about feminism. That's when you get ostracized. But plenty of people can express it. It just you have to be prepared for the punishment that people will deem you or look down upon you when you stick to your guns on certain topics. We've seen it a lot this summer. I mean, look what happened with Macy Gray. And what happened with that dude, Matt Walsh?
You're being put down for being American. You're being put down for being a white man. And you just sit there. And you keep.
Because you can sit back and laugh at it, nothing will happen to him. That's the whole entire point. When you're in rulership, nothing will happen to you. Yeah, a lot of people will start to notice. A lot of people will still be like, oh, yeah, that white man is trash and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about power. So when it's about someone who's in power and all these unfair things is happening, you could chuckle and laugh and just look at people and be like, yeah, you're foolish. And this is in no way of me defending this whole entire thing. I just like to give my perspective on it where I meet it at the middle. But here nor there.
Keep taking it, and taking it, and taking it. And I know there's a lot of you motherfuckers out there, okay? In Texas, Montana, Idaho. I mean, when the fuck are you gonna do something? And I ain't prejudiced by no means. But if I've seen any race being kicked in the dirt and treated like they ain't shit, it's been the white man. And you can agree with me or not, but I think there's a lot of motherfuckers with a little bit of balls that will agree with me. Between this abortion shit, all of a sudden the white man is a piece of shit and ain't worth a damn.
You know what's really funny about the things that he says, especially related and talking about abortion? That when you start to look on the news and you start to look at who's behind this, it's still so-called white men behind agreeing with the Roe versus Wade decision. And how so many people was just like, the white man never let me do this. It's my baby. It's my body. I can do whatever I want. It's always two sides of the coin, the heads and tails. The heads is the so-called white man, the tails of the so-called white man. Not many so-called white men, well, I can't really say that, but at the end of the day, there was still a so-called white man that still was influenced by that to make that decision. Senates, the cabinets, Joe Biden, and all those different things, they agreed or they disagreed with it. So I just think it's very funny when people want to sit up there and put up all these like accolades and try to put all these different like quote unquote excuses or woke points to sit here and make it seem like, oh, the so-called white man is being put down when the so-called white man still made the decision on it. I mean, who do we have a majority of when it comes to the Supreme Court? We only got like one so-called white man. I mean, one so-called black man and one so-called black woman that just got inducted. Like, what are we talking about? It's just, a lot of this stuff, when people make these commentaries, I just sit back, I just be like, okay, because you still have a lot of so-called white men behind the cabinet that's going to make these decisions and sit up there and try to overturn Roe versus Wade or do all these crazy monumental changes in America. But yet the so-called white man is being put down. How?
Y'all really need to think about it.
I
ain't just talking nonsense. Deep down in your heart, you know what time it is. You've been cut in line. You've been called a cracker.
And the thing about it is, I never like it when so-called black people call so-called white people a cracker, because then they try to say that the term itself come from the crack of a whip that was beaten on a slave. You know what I'm saying? And to me, it's like, so by calling somebody a cracker, right, a so-called white person a cracker, that still would allude to the fact of the matter, it was a so-called white man that held a cracker whip and whipped your so-called slave self, right? And this is not about me sounding like a so-called coon, because slavery was a very horrible event that happened in history. We can agree on that. But to find the origin of what it means about cracker, there's many sources that will tell you the reasons why cracker was came up, why was a term that was used. And of course, when you dig this, the crates through history, and I'm not gonna lie, like I know everything, but you know, as far as my research going on a cracker or talking about the word cracker, where the word cracker comes from, the term cracker, as far as I'm concerned, it first started off with talking about the poor whites or talking about the farmers that were so-called white out in the South that would use whips to go on their cattle, right? They would talk about the animals. They would whip and they would have it would be a crack sound when they whipped it on the cattle and the animals out there, the farms, right? It used to be on the so-called poor whites. Now, of course, they moved it on to talking and alluding to so-called blacks because of the fact of the matter they was viewed as property. So in in context to how cracker came about, relating so-called black people to animals and relating them to property, right? That's what I think would be the reason why they transferred it from so-called poor whites over to so-called black people, right? Or just saying that was a term to kind of just beat the jab back at so-called white people. But I've always viewed cracker as a frivolous term to sit here and talk about a so-called white person. Just in my view, I would never want to call a so-called white person a cracker. I know there's different words that I know that I can use in order to demean a so-called white person, but why would I? I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of different terms I know I can come up with in order to demean a so-called white person. But this is where history comes in, because if you really know history, you know exactly what really was going on for the so-called black man and what was going on for the so-called black woman before slavery.
Come on, man. Just hold it down. Stand your ground. That's all.
And the only thing I can say to that is that man sitting up there saying that, the only thing that I could think in the back of my head is he trying to allude to a race war? America is fixated on so many different problems at this angle, especially how we experience this so-called recession, inflation period, and all these different things. I can only wait and see the fact of the matter there's going to be more divide and conquer strategies that's going to come along in the next few years, if it hasn't already. But keep your heads up, children. I'm back. Make sure you like and subscribe. Peace.